Alright, hello everyone and welcome to our next video. Today we are looking at the brain. Again, I am going to go through a bit of an overview leading up to the brain. I'll point out some important things, and most of what we do in class will be really important and what you need to know. This is the background to understand that. Now, the role of the brain, as you would already know, it is the main coordinating center in the body. It receives information from all parts of the body, and it integrates this information, then makes decisions and carries out actions. Okay, the brain and the spinal cord are the central nervous system. So there's two nervous system parts to the nervous system: the central nervous system and the peripheral. As you can guess, central is the brain and the spinal cord. Peripheral is when the nerves branch out into the periphery. You can see here the size of different brains, which I thought was interesting. So an elephant brain is a lot huger than I realized, 4.8 kilograms. Okay. So you can see the spine running down the back, kind of like a motorway, and then giving access to all parts of the body. Okay, so messages come from all parts of the body through these nerves, and then up the motorway, back to the brain. Okay. Oh, I should have mentioned something else, but that's okay. All right, so now this is important to note. You definitely need to know the three parts of the brain and be able to label them. So the first part is the cerebrum. Now, the cerebrum is this big yellow squiggly part in the middle. It is the main part of the brain, so it takes up most space in the brain. We have the cerebellum, or the little brain, which is down here, and it does kind of look like a wrinkly old little brain attached to the bottom at the base where the brainstem is, and the brainstem, which goes down here and attaches to the spinal cord. The brainstem is actually made up of three parts. So it's the midbrain, which is up in here, the pons, which is this little section here, and the medulla, which is here. So make sure you can label those. Now, this is a real brain here. Just pause the video for a second, see if you can yourself identify the parts of the brain. Okay, now that you've had a second, you can see here, this part here is the cerebrum, the main part of the brain. This little C-shaped thing here is called the corpus callosum. So think of a C-shape, CC, corpus callosum, and it's the highway between the two halves of the brain. So the cerebrum is made up of two hemispheres, two halves. The cerebellum is this kind of ugly looking thing down here, the little brain, and you can see the the brainstem here connecting to the spinal cord. We have the pons here, the medulla oblongata, and the midbrain up there. All right, so as I said, the cerebrum is made up of two halves, which are connected by the C-shaped corpus callosum. The cerebrum is made up of also a number of lobes. Now, these lobes have the different functions which correspond to different actions in the body. Okay, here are the lobes of the brain. We have the frontal lobe, the parietal lobe, the occipital lobe, and the temporal lobe. So there's 4 lobes going on. Now, these are some of the functions of these lobes. Okay, so you can see we have a primary auditory area, which is obviously to do with hearing. We have a speech area, which is to do with speech here. We have a motor area to do with motor actions, so movement. A sensory area to do with our senses, taking in sensory information. Another speech area at the back here. We have a visual area here, looking after our vision. And there are a lot of other parts of the brain which look after other things. For example, the frontal lobe does a lot of higher order processing up the front here, which aren't mentioned obviously in this. Now, this is just for your own interest's sake, just to get an idea of the motor cortex. So what this is you can see this blue part here is the actual motor cortex. So it's the part, if you slice the brain, that's the little outside part of the brain. And it's showing what parts of the brain correspond to what parts of the body in terms of motor actions. Now, the reason that it looks a bit funny and there's some parts that are a lot bigger than others is showing how highly represented each part of the body is within the motor cortex. Okay, so if it's bigger, it's more represented, and if it's smaller, it's less represented. Meaning, if it's more represented, it is richly innervated by motor neurons. Okay, so it has a lot more nerves going to that area to control the movement in that area. So obviously the face has a lot, the tongue has a lot, and the hands have a lot because they're tricky, require a lot of fine motor control. Okay, and we call this, if we took that off this last picture and put it into just a human figure, that's what it would look like, and we call it the motor homunculus. Now this is just showing a visual representation of how the motor nerves innervate each parts of the body. Okay, so if it's more represented or less represented. Now we have the same thing for the sensory cortex. As you could imagine, again, things like your lips are very highly innervated by sensory neurons, so it's a lot bigger. And then things like, obviously, your feet are a bit smaller, and we know that they're not as sensitive as, say, your lips. Again, there's the sensory homunculus for you. It's an interesting looking character, isn't it? Okay, we're going to stop there.